Hmm? Granddad never mentioned that there were men as dark as this. Wow, look at that nose. He's just like a pig. He's a monster! Hi!
In today's episode, I'm joined by Milton Washington, who wrote an article in The Root last year about the racist Chinese laundry detergent commercial and how it connects with Asian racism as a whole. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My first question is, when you saw that commercial for the first time, what crossed your mind? What did you think about it?
To be honest, what crossed my mind was first it was a mixture of, that's just the way that goes, and mixed with me wanting to kind of, educate the outrage that I heard. So a lot of people kind of have their issues with, racism and it's kind of different forms and it's always kind of different from different countries and it's kind of exacted to different people and I just happen to know a little something about racism in Asia, but from a broader scope, I pay attention to racism. When I saw that article and I saw the reactions, I thought it was a good opportunity to educate some folks.
And in your article, you go into explaining what it's like growing up, what it was like for you growing up in South Korea. Can you delve in a little bit more and give me an idea of how you felt as a half black, half Korean man living in South Korea, what that was like? Yeah,
sure. I'm writing a book about it. It's a book called Slicky Boy. Hopefully we'll have a deal here in a month or two. It's a memoir. But I'll tell it to you this way to kind of begin to answer that question. The synopsis of the book goes like this. A fatherless black boy is born to a Korean prostitute a decade and a half after the Korean War, left to roam his camp town with a pack of homeless kids. Little Milton fights, steals, and drinks as his mother works long hours, all into the age of 8 when he's adopted from the country that never claimed him by a black military family from Texas, the Washingtons. So Slicky Boy is about the love and the loss of one mother and the finding of another with a lifetime of living in between. So that's kind of the overarching, story of the book and therefore my experience. But to specifically answer your question, if Korea is all about this notion of, coming from this royal Korean blood, this Mongolian king, and they have kind of the society is kind of structured in a way that kind of clearly defines what it means to be Korean. Anybody who's mixed, especially if you're mixed with black and Korean, you are not Korean, right? So, even though, between the age of, kind of as I was born up until the age of 8 years old, I was in Korea and all I knew was Korean, everything from food to culture to language. I thought America was, golden cities that floated in the clouds with, flying cars and mountains made out of ice cream. I had no other idea. And I'm wondering, well, why in the hell is everybody giving me some hell, right? Just because, and I'm looking at myself, I'm like, well, I am a little different than they are. So as a result, nobody, none of the kids would play with me, none of, all the adults, they would stop in their tracks and spit in my path and call me, the Korean equivalent, for nigga, right? And, but I also knew that, I think because part of it was the protection of the love that my mother gave me and kind of what she expressed to me as a kid. Like I knew, number one, I had to get the hell out of Korea because I knew that, these kids who didn't want to have anything to do with me weren't right. Because I'm like, I always kind of had the notion, I'm like, listen, I'm better at being a little boy than you are. I can do all the things better than you. I almost felt like Michael Jordan, walking up to a pickup game and there people were like, nah, we don't want you because you black, So it was extreme isolation. And it was this, kind of deep seated desire to want to get the hell out of Korea because, any little boy, any little child doesn't want isolation. They just want to, be a part of the thing and get along and be a regular kid, So, yeah, I caught hell in Korea.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel as though, because in your article you express that part of the racism is related to how the U.S. portrayed black men in Korea and how they separated Asian women who were having sex with black men from white men because supposedly black men had higher rates of STDs, which was propaganda. But do you feel like the racism that exists in Korea or in Asia in general is related to white American propaganda, or is it just like already deeply ingrained within the culture?
I think white American propaganda was the biggest driver, right? I do. I think it was the biggest driver, because narrative is always such a big driver when it comes to these issues. Doesn't matter where you go, right? And I don't know if I said it in the article, but one of the things, not only in South Korea but even in like Japan, once the U.S. military was in Asia, it was kind of known amongst the women who worked the streets that the black soldiers were just so much nicer. They were more fun. They were nicer. And as a result, there was this big narrative out there, but a lot of the women were like, yeah, but these guys are fun. They're nice. They give us bigger tips and, I don't know, maybe even tips of all kinds. There's no telling. You know what I mean? But narrative is always a very, very important driver in all these things. There's that, right? But then, I don't know. Maybe I even have some kind of controversial views when it comes to racism too, because if I'm some 5'5" Korean dude and all my peeps are like 5'6", 5'7", little Korean dudes or little Chinese dudes. I know that's gonna sound stereotypical to a lot of folks, but I've been in Asia. You know what I mean? And and I saw some big black dude. I'd be afraid of him too. You know what I mean? And a lot of us, just pound for pound, a lot of black men are so much bigger. Our physiques are bigger. We look more muscular. We look more athletic. I don't really trip off of this notion that people are afraid of us. I don't. Listen, I played ball. I played football in college. Size matters. Size matters in that equation of fear. So if I'm some little dude, and like I said, a lot of my dudes are little, and this 6'5" black dude, dark as hell, I don't care how nice he is, I'm afraid of that guy. He's physically superior than I am, in my mind. So to answer your question, yeah, I think narrative plays a big role, and the U.S. military had their reasons for pushing that narrative, just beyond the general racist views of many of the generals and the leaders of the military, but it served a purpose. It served a purpose that was that was pretty ugly, but like all things of racism. But if you couple that strong narrative with this the sheer aesthetic of a black man, I'm like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. You can have anybody afraid of us. So even here in America, when many of us black folks, and Latino types, whether Puerto Rican, Dominican, whatever, and people hear about white folks being afraid of us. I just look at us physically compared to our counterparts. I'm 240 pounds, man. I don't trip if somebody's afraid of me because I'm big. I look capable. I look like I can whoop some ass. So yeah, I don't trip off a lot of that.
Speaking about America, do you feel as though the race relations between Asians and blacks are better here? Do you feel as though there's a sense of racism for black people, or is it like for other races, whatnot? How do you compare what it's like in Asia compared to the States?
Well, I think it's a strange thing, because it's so much of racism around the world. There's this kind of weird dichotomy of like, oh, we can't stand black folks, but there's this kind of secret thing of we kind of want to be them though. We want to have the things that they have. right? So, and then, I remember there was a football player named Hines Ward. He was the receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was the MVP of the Super Bowl. And me and Hines, we got kind of similar stories. And all of a sudden, he gets invited after the Super Bowl to Korea, gets a key to the city of Seoul, and all of a sudden he's a winner, right? And that's kind of that's one of the things that breaks through a lot of the racist, kind of the bullshit, just the perception of one group of folks at another person or another group of folks, when they go, oh, this guy here, he's different, he's a winner, because all the other guys are losers, they're bad, all the negative things, and he's a winner now. So meaning to say that, like in Korea, and I could speak for Korea. Especially now there are a lot of Middle Easterns there, there are a lot of Africans there. They're kind of still viewed a certain kind of way, and I would say, generally speaking, that their perception is extremely negative. And it's, you have an entire world that's against you, right? But if you're black or of color in Korea, I don't know. It's almost kind of like, it's about setting expectations. You kind of know that, that world over there just doesn't really like you for the most part, except your, the personal relationships that you may have with, the people that who, folks that you may work with, folks who have taken the time to get to know you and they like you for you, right? But generally speaking, you're in a sea of folks who probably look down at you. I think that's different than here in the States, in which here in the States, I think kind of the legacy of slavery and also all of the other immigrants to desire to want to assimilate, and mostly to assimilate white. There's a covertness to it, and that covertness to it kind of always kind of keeps you on uneasy ground, because you don't necessarily know who you're dealing with. And I don't know. It's like, would you like to be in a place in which everyone racist and they hate you, or not, or be in a place in which you don't know everyone's everyone's racist, but they still hate you. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I prefer, I prefer the devil I know versus the devil I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It definitely feels, from my experience, that it's we like you, but we don't like you. I've had that feeling many times. Do you think it's different for I don't know if you know about Latinos, but if you can speak on that, is there a sense of disdain for Latinos as well, or is it more just mostly black? If you can speak on that. Well,
I think and I'll just speak from kind of a general rule of thumb. Mm-hmm. And it goes beyond Asia, but generally speaking, the darker you are, the more hell you catch. So the answer is, to them, if a dark-skinned Latino goes to Korea, they just think you're black until you open your mouth. They go, well, what kind of nigga is he? You know what I mean? But generally speaking, even here in the U.S., and again, I think it's a global phenomenon that the darker you are, the more disliked you're going to be, because the darker you are, the more you represent the narrative. Mm-hmm. Right? So, I think, if a Latino person goes to South Korea, that guy's got a better chance of kind of making friends than, somebody that, that's much darker or darker skinned Latino. So I think that's one of the biggest drivers.
Okay. What do you say about the people who deny that there is a disdain for black people in the Asian community, whether it be in Korea or in the States? Because you got a lot of people who do act as though racism is dead and Asians are open to, dating or associating with black people. And that's the case in some regard. But some of them just full on deny any sense of racism. What do you say to that?
Well, it's like, hey, there's no sun outside ever. You know what I mean? Just because it's a cloudy day, you know, I guess I wouldn't even. I don't even take the time to even bother that, you know. And some people are so kind of entrenched in their own thing, or they may be so defensive about their own perspective that, you know, that they just completely deny reality. You know, if enough people are experiencing a thing and you just completely deny it, then you're just in denial. You know what I mean? And there are a lot of reasons why people want to be in denial. You know, racism, it's a very uncomfortable thing. You know, regardless on what side of the line you're on. Mm-hmm. You know, hell, I'm racist. I can have my racist moments. You know, there's a couple schools of thought. People, well, if you have color, you can't be racist. I don't believe that. You know, but you know, but me, generally speaking, man, to be honest, I think we're all racist. And if we ain't all racist, we're all biased. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe that, then you don't believe it. But you know, I think power, you know, is a thing that changes people, and a lot of times people like to exert power over somebody, especially when those somebodies are, you know, kind of feed into a narrative that's in someone's mind or someone's heart, and they feel better than somebody else because of that narrative. It's power is a very addictive thing, you know. You know, and if it ain't racism, you know, how many dudes do you know that they just feel that they're just completely better than a woman, you know, just because they're a dude? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, you know, if it ain't racism, it's going to be sexism. You know, it's going to be one half of the world against the other half of the world. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be something. Yeah.
I think also, just to add to your point, that there's a positivity bias. So it's easier to say racism is dead or racism is dying because it feels good than to challenge the issue of racism as a whole. So if somebody comes out and says, no, Asians really don't like blacks, you know, that doesn't feel good. Somebody says, well, yeah, it was like that, but I think it's an exaggeration, or like, you know, things are getting better, or like you don't really know what you're talking about. I think that feels better. So people just gravitate to that rather than the reality.
Yeah. 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 And the thing is, it's hard to have a conversation, you know, talking about like a whole nation full of folks, but, but there's countries like South Korea, it's a very, such a homogenous country. Anytime you have such a homogenous country, you're going to have, anything that falls outside of that kind of their race construct, or ethnic construct, they're not going to like a lot of folks, but generally speaking, they like white folks more than black folks. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But is every Korean racist? Probably not. Are they all biased? We're all biased. Mm-hmm. And can you categorize all of them in one big boat? Probably not. But I'm gonna tell I'll tell any one of my friends, if you're black, especially if you're dark and you're going to Korea, you better be ready for some looks.
What would you say to Asian women about black men as a whole who may not have seen black men or don't necessarily haven't experienced any of this? What do you have to say to them in the Asian community about black men?
That's actually, to me, that's a very, very, it's a complex question. Because I say it's a complex question because I think, I think black men, pound for pound, are some of the most traumatized folks in the world. I do. In this country, we have a hell of a target on us. Everything from, I think if you put a black little boy versus a white boy, or even a black little boy versus a black little girl, the target is on us to kind of keep us down in many ways, from receiving a decent education, getting a lot of shots at, legitimate shots at life. I say all that to say, and again, I'm just trying to simplify this as best I can, but I think a lot of us black men are, collectively and individually traumatized, and many of us have not addressed that trauma. Now, with that statement, how does that relate to, well, what would you say to an Asian woman who's interested, I think pound for pound, many of us black men, we got a lot of shit to us. We have a lot of shit to, and I think there's a lot of healing we need to do. And because of the fact that a lot of us haven't kind of done, kind of gone through this healing process, I think many of us are damaging, other people. And one of the things that I'm particularly kind of, I think keenly aware of, I think many of us are unfortunately damaging our sisters. I think there are a lot of folks out there. There's a stereotype that black women are angry, black women are crazy. I think to a large extent, a lot of them are, and I think a lot of them are because we done made them that way. Like I honestly believe that. I think we done made them. We done made a lot of black women crazy. We done made a lot of black women angry because I personally think that a lot of black women, like, they just want to be with us. They don't really want to be with anybody else. But a lot of us, we don't give a damn. A lot of black men, we don't, whoever holler at us, we're gonna holler at, and then so we're out kind of wandering with any and anybody. And a lot of the, I think a lot of women of color, black women, they go out and they, test their loves, test the waters out there, and only to kind of return because they want and need us. And we're not there for them. And when we are there for them, I think many of us are playing too many games. And this doesn't mean that all of us, because I know, what's he talking about? I know my friend, she married for 20 years. No, this ain't all of us. But I'm saying, generally speaking, and it's hard to have these kind of conversations using that term, generally speaking. But I'll say all day long, I think us black men, when it comes to being with our black women, we need to step the fuck up. I'm sorry. I just think we do. And, so going back to your question, what does an Asian woman need to think about us, us black men? I almost don't care because I care about black men and black women first and foremost. But, if you're an Asian woman, you're into black men, I think you just need to know that, black men kind of go through some unique experiences which put a lot of pressure on us, and I think, you need to know that you need to know what you're getting into.
A lot of baggage, I guess.
I think pound for pound, you know what I mean? I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but pound for pound, do you think us black men have the same amount of baggage as everybody else, pound for pound?
No, I think Latinos have it close in some regards. I think there's a reason why blacks and Latinos are usually grouped in terms of demographics and stuff like that, because they've not as badly, but, and I could say this as Latino and being black, not as badly treated as blacks, but treated similarly as bad. And I think the only difference is that they have lighter skin in many regards, and that's what makes it easier for Latinos to deal with some of the things that blacks have to deal with. And it's complicated because on the one hand, like you said, you have Asian women that see what black men are going through, and some of them do act crazy, but it's a product of what they've had to deal with. But then the stereotype gets reinforced because they're acting exactly the way that people say black people act. But it's not because of who they are, it's because they've been told that that's how they're going to act, and they're not given a chance to act otherwise. I think personally, from an Asian woman's perspective, that you have to recognize and be sympathetic to that. If you're going to date somebody that's black, particularly somebody who hasn't been as successful as the average person, I don't personally think that Asian women are willing to deal with that. I think that they're more willing to go into the status side of it. It's just like, hey, you know what? That sucks for you. Let me go and date a white guy who doesn't have all those problems. An Asian guy doesn't have all those problems. And that's your prerogative. But let's not act like there isn't a decision being made there based off of race, if that makes any sense.
Sure, absolutely.
That's how I look at it. I think it is a very complex issue. I don't think Asian racism in terms of dating is all about race and disdain for black and Hispanic men, but I think it's very complicated. Part of it is disdain, and part of it is not recognizing that the disdain exists.